Hey folks, welcome back. In this video, we will be talking about Python classes and objects. Let's talk about why we use class. So class combines attributes and functions together. That means variables and functions together in the same instance. We can reuse the code by using inheritance concepts. Class provides all object-oriented principles. Currently, we are not going to discuss that. It provides the better way to manage the code. Yeah, so these are the uses that class provides. So let's talk about the object. So object is a thing in a real world that can be anything like chair, car, table, pen, anything. Let's talk about the class definition. Class is a blueprint or a template for creating the objects. So a class defines all the properties and attributes that object will be using. So class is a template. So we can create as many as objects from the same class. Let's talk about the class syntax. So here is the syntax. So class is a Python's keyword, built-in keyword. After that, we need to give a space. After that, we can define the class name. So the class name should be in camel case notation, not the snake case notation. After that, we have a tab space, the indentation. So we need to follow the indentation. After that, we can define the class attributes. And we can also define methods as required. So def is a keyword, and after that, we need to have a space after that method name. So whatever the functions that are inside that we define inside the class, so we call that as a method. So by default, it takes a self as an argument. So self represents the object itself or a class instance. So that's the simple syntax of the class. Let's talk about the teacup class. So here we define the teacup. So let's talk about the teacup first. So teacup contains this space. So we can fill the that space with tea, and we can, when we drink it, so that becomes empty. So here we need to have a attribute that represents whether the teacup is empty or not. So if teacup is not empty, then we can pass it as false to the is empty attribute. So if the teacup is empty, then we can pass the value as true. So by default, we need to have true. And in terms of functionality, we can drink the tea and we can fill the tea. So those two. So that's what we implemented here. So we define the class and we named it as a teacup. So we can see the camel case notation, and we define the attribute. So is empty equals to true by default. So initially the cup is empty. So after that, we need to provide the functionality, that is fill t. So we define the method fill t, and inside that what we are doing. So once we fill the t, we are just updating the is empty equals to false. So once we fill the tree, the cup is not empty anymore. And we also implemented one more method, that is drink tea. So here what we are doing, so we are updating the is empty equals to true. So in order to access the class attribute inside the method, so we need to use self float is empty. So that's how we use the is empty equals to true. Okay, now let's copy this code to playground and do some coding. So I just copied it. Let's run the code. So currently we defined it, we didn't do anything. So that's why it didn't print anything, or it didn't run. Let's create the class object. Let's say object equals to teacup and print object. So now we got the object here, and this is the object ID. Let's call it as object 1, and let's create one more object, object 2. So let's call object 1 and object 2. So here we can see that we created two objects, and two objects has different memory. So this is the ID. So we can also check that by calling I mean by using ID function. ID is a built-in function in Python, so that gives the reference value. So here we can see that. So both has two different IDs. So that means we can verify that we are not creating the duplicate objects. So every time we create an object, so Python creates a new object of the class. So let's that is clear, and now Let me remove this print statement as well. So now we have the object. So now we need to find a way to access the attributes of the object and methods of the class. So let's use print object dot is empty. So here we are using dot followed by attribute name. So this is a way to access the attribute of the object or class. So here we can see that we got the result. So we can also, for better readability, I'm just updating the print statement here is empty. So let's run it. So is empty equals to true now. That's fine. And so we know how to access the attribute. Let's see how we can access the method on the object. So let's call fill t. So in the same way, first we need to have object. After that, we need to give dot. After that, we need to have fill t. So it is inside the it is a function inside the class. So we just need to use two parentheses to call it. So that's because it is not taking, so it is taking self as a first parameter. But when we use the object dot notation, so the class, what class or object, that automatically passes the object inside it. So that's why we didn't get any error for the um, self. So let's call it, and now we are filling the t. So now the attribute should be false now. So it says we filled the t and is empty is false. So that tells us, so this method is called okay, so now it is empty. Let's call the um, drink tea after filling the tea. So now we can see that first we, oh, looks like we just call the same function. Let me call the drink tea and run it again. So here we can see that first we fill the tree and then we drink the tree and is empty is true. So let me duplicate this print statement after filling the tree. Okay, so let me clear this and run it again. So here we can see that we fill the t first and we check the attribute, that is empty equals to false, and then we drink the t and then is empty equals to true now. So that's how we access the class methods and attributes through object. So there is one other way to access the attributes on the class at class level. So we can print teacup dot is empty. So it did work, but let me call one more method, that is fill t, and let's access the same attribute on the class. So it is still true, but when we access uh, the object is empty and class level is empty. Let's clear this first and run it again. So here we can see that object is empty is false now, and teacup.isempty is true. That's because, so whenever we access any attributes after creating the object, so that doesn't have any effect on class level attributes. So that's why we didn't see the false state updated on the teacup.isempty attribute. So that's a thing we should note of. Okay. So we also able to call these functions. So it takes the parameter self. So we need to use that and we need to pass the object in order to do that. So let me show you the other thing. Okay. Let me just remove this tree and print. Okay. We don't need actually print statement. Teacup dot bring t. So it takes the argument self. So now we need to pass this object and run the code. So now we can see that we got the same. So it means calling like int and calling with class, these two are same. So that's how we use classes and objects to call the attributes and methods on the class level and object level. So yeah, let's go to talk about terminology of a class. So class is a keyword that we already seen, and class name. So whenever we define the class, we should give a class name for that. And we can create the attributes on the class, and we can create the methods inside the class, or functions, member functions. Um, Now we have a one more thing, that is underscore underscore new underscore underscore. This is a special method that acts as a constructor in a Python class. And we have one more method, so that is underscore underscore init underscore. So that is the initializer method. So whenever we create the object, so constructor method, sorry, whenever we initialize the class and create the object, so these two methods gets called by default. So first underscore underscore new method gets called, after that is responsible for creating the object, and after that underscore underscore init underscore underscore method gets called. So that will initialize the default or basic data for the object. So let's look at the simple example for that. Let's go to playground and remove this code. Let's define class person. So let's define uh, okay, we need to have the tab space define underscore underscore init, and this takes first name and last name, two parameters, and update self dot first name equals to first name, and self dot last name equals to last name. So now we have the person object, so we can have the method to get full name, get full name, define self, and print or return format self dot first name and space self dot last name. So now we define the class. What we need to do, we need to create the object of the class. Object equals to person, or let's give the name Anji. So that's because I'm creating the person as Anji. So we need to pass Anji as a first name, and um, last name as B. So now we need to get full name. Full name equals to Anji dot get full name. Let's print the full name. Yeah, looks like it expects two lines as per Flake. So let's run it. So now we got the full name. So we hear what is this init method is doing. So it is initializing the attributes of the uh, class or object. So that's what we see here. So we created the object here. So the init method added the two attributes for that, that is first name and last name. And then when we call the full name, so we got the full name. So we can also create one more person object. Let's call it as Shiva, and let's say D here. And now instead of on Anji, so we just pass the sorry, we just pass the Shiva object here. So now we are what we are doing, we are calling the get full name function, sorry, method on the object Shiva. So let's see what will be the output. So now we got Shiva D. So that's how we use the init method to initialize the um, attributes or the function. So we can also call the function here as well, get full name. So in initializer function, so if we want to get something, let's say we want to get connection to the database, or we want to make an API call and get the data from somewhere else, so then we can use the function, sorry, methods inside the initializer function as well. So if we just comment this out and this on this one, so we are actually calling this function. So whenever we create this object, so we get this method gets called, and we'll get the output, and this one as well. So in order to confirm that, just use update the method some like this, full name equals to, and then print the full name, and then just return full name. Let me clear this out and run it again. So now we got ngb and show id automatically. So by just creating the object. So that's because we are calling that method here. So this way we can initialize the whatever the data that is required for the object using init method. So let's talk about the underscore underscore new method. That is new. That is a constructor of the what we call class. So for this we have two objects. So let's say we have a restriction on the Python class. We don't want to create more than two objects from the class person. So how do we do that? So we don't do that in init method. That's because this is just an initializer of the class. So for that we need to use underscore underscore new method. So what is the method signature for this? So it takes the class as a first parameter, and then star args whatever the arguments that we are passing as a uh, initializer for the line number 15. This is Anji and B, and for number for line number 16, that is Shiva and D. So keyword args. So it accepts. It works just like functions. So this is a class is an extension of functions. So star args and star keyword args. Let's have a print statement for this. So now we are printing the all the what were the arguments that are we received for the this method, that is underscore underscore new it. Okay. So now let's have attribute, class level attribute count equals to 0. Initially the count is 0. So whenever we create the object, so the count needs to be updated. So the init sorry, the new constructor functionality or responsibility is to create the object. So let's do that first by calling super dot underscore underscore new. It just takes the class. So now what we need to do, we need to give this as object equals to this and print the object and return the object. So now we have the new method. It is taking the data, whatever the data that we pass, and then it is creating the object, and then we are returning it back. So, and we need to have a restriction, right? So we created the object. Now we need to increase the count. That is class dot count equals to count plus 1. So it increases the class each time when we update the each time we create the object. So we also need to have a check here. If class dot count is greater than 2, then we need to throw the error. So in Python we use raise keyword and exception class to throw the error. So let's give can't create more than 2 objects, right? So just comment out this and right. So it did create the objects. So first time we got the class, and then this is the main person, and we got the arguments, and then we have the keywords for creating the first object, and then we created the object, right? For the second call, we use the same class, and we pass the different arguments, that is show and d, and we didn't pass any keyword arguments, and then we have the other class object. So this works fine for two what we call two Python objects for the function for the class person. So now let's create one more person, Vishnu, or let's call it as Vishnu some G. Let's run the code. Okay, looks like it's still created the object, but it should throw the error 0, 1, 2. Okay, let's create one more person and see. John. So now we got the error. That's weird. We can see that here we got the error, can't create more than two objects. So that's how we create the constructor, so that validates the count. So looks like here we defined the 0, so that's why we got the 0, 1, 2. So 0, 1, 2, so that's why it didn't throw the error for the first time. So if we run the code again, okay, let me remove this one. So if we run the code again, so can't create more than two objects. So that's because we already created these two. So that's the reason we did get the error for that. So that's how we use the new and init methods inside the class. So we don't need to override this method always. So whenever we have class level restrictions, then we can override underscore underscore a new constructor method to modify the class functionality and other things. So we talked about constructor method, we talked about initializer method, self keyword. So we call this at line number 15, we have a person object that is Anji, so we call that as an instance. The same thing self represents inside the class, so whenever we call, so that's why so outside of the class we access like Anji dot first name to access the attribute, but inside the person class we call self dot first name to access the attribute of the class. So we looked at all these and we looked at underscore underscore new and init. Let's talk about class methods. We can define class methods in three ways, that is instance method, class method and static method. So these three method definitions has three different use cases. So let's talk about the instance method first. So we have already used the instance method, that is this. And let's talk about so instance method takes the self as a first parameter. So let's talk about the class method. Let me remove this code and let me define. Let's talk about a date class. Let's define our own custom date class. um, let's talk about a date. So when we define the date, so the date needs to have year, month and day. So let's define that. Def underscore underscore init self year, uh, month and day. So let's initialize the year equals to year, and then let's initialize month and let's initialize day. So now we have the date object. um let's also define string. So this, what this will do, so this will simply return the a string format of the string of notation of the object. So let's return f notation and then self dot year and hyphen and then self dot month hyphen and self dot day. So let's define the object first. Object equals to date of 2024 and then first month and then today is 13th. Okay, so now we define the object and just print the object. So what we will get is, let's run it Python classes and objects playground. So we got string notation of the date. So that's why that's because we defined the underscore underscore str method that is responsible for returning the string, I mean the name of the object. So that is cool. Let's talk about the class method. So let's say we want to create the object, that is date object, from the string. So how do we do that? In this case, we use a class method, we need to define the class method decorator. We call this when we use at the rate, after that we have a something, then we call it as a decorator in Python. So let's define the method now. So when we use this class method, initially what it takes, it don't take the self. That's because this is not at an object level. So this class method can be accessible on the um, date class. So from string, let's define from string. This takes the first parameter as class and then date string. So now we have the date string. So now we need to convert that and return object. So let's do that. Date. Okay. Year, comma, month, comma, day equals to date string dot split with hyphen. So when we do this date string dot split hyphen, so that creates a list, and then we are unpacking that to year, month, day. Okay, or just now we can use class to create the object. Okay, return class. So this CLS is same as a date, so that's why we are using CLS instead of date. So now what we need to do, we need to just pass year and month and date to the class, that is the alias of the date, and it creates the object. So what we will do now is just remove this object equals to date dot from string. So now we need to pass the string, that is, let's pass 2001 28. So now print the date dot, oh sorry, obj, my bad, obj dot year. Let's save this and run it. So now we got 2000. So what we did, we just used this method at class level. So we called it on class. So here we can see that we used from string, and we just passed the string that is date string 2000 hyphen 01 hyphen this format. So here what we are doing, we are just splitting that, and we use the class, that is the alias of date, and then we are creating the object. So for this type of use cases, we use class methods. Okay, let's talk about static method now. So static method is just same as what we call normal method that we sorry, normal function that we write, except it is just associated to class. So let's define, so let's convert this class method to static method. So static method does not take any what we call, it does not take any um, class arguments or anything. So it just takes the string. It works just like a function, so it doesn't take CLS or self inside it. So now we are doing the same thing, but instead of class here we pass date. So let's run it the same way. We got the same output. So yeah, so that's the difference between static method, class method, and instance method. So whenever we want to have the functionality associated to the object, then we use instance method. And if we want to have a class, the alias class available, and then we can use the excuse me, class method. So otherwise we want to have any static method, and then we can use static method. So let's see other example for the static method. Let me remove all this code, and let's talk about calculator. So calculator, we don't need to create the object for the basic functions like multiplication and addition, subtraction, and division. So let's create a class basic calculator, and then let's have a static method def multiply number one, number two, and then what we need to return, number one into number two. Now we can just copy this, we implement the addition, and we can simply copy this and create um, subtraction. Okay, for now just oh sorry, this is not the intro, this is number two. Okay, for now just use these three methods to use the static method. Now we can simply call this static method on the class level. Basic calc dot add or addition 10 comma 30, just call it as result, and then print result. You need to have one more line there. So let me clear this out and run it again. So now here we can see that we got the addition of uh, 10 plus 30. So let's replace that with multiply. So now we should get 300, and let's replace that with subtraction. We got minus 20. So that is the expected result. So this way, whenever we have a class sorry, static functionality that doesn't require any class level uh, attributes, or but they are all grouped or similar functionality, so then we can group them by using the class, something like this. So this way we don't import the statements like multiply. We don't need to define multiply, addition and subtraction in different as a different functions, so we can combine all these functions together and use it. So this is the three ways that we can use instance method, class method, and static method. So let's talk about the um, catalog, that is library catalog. So let's create the let's solve this problem using Python class. So let's read the statement. Design a book class with attributes like title and author, and create a library class to manage a collection of books, allowing for add, find, and borrow books. So generally, what we do, so we librarian gets some books, and then that means we can he can add a new book, and some person goes to the library and he takes the book. That means he is borrowing the book, and he wants to let's say if user wants to know what are the all available books in the library, so he can able to get that. So that's what we are going to implement using Python class. Let me go to playground and remove this. And first let's define a book class book. Let's define init method. Oops, my bad. Def underscore underscore init, and then self book name and author. Self dot name equals to name, and self dot author equals to author. Yeah. Okay, let's define string format, string notation of the book, and return f notation self dot name. Oops, there is typo, and then self dot author. Now we have the author. Let's check whether the book is working as expected or not. Let's define a book. A book equals to book of Python, and let's call me as a author. Let's print. Let's me clear this first and run it. So now we can see that we can see the book here. So it's working. We have the book class. Now let's talk about the library class. So library takes the books. We need to store the books. So let me remove this and create the class library. So we need to have init function for this as well. Books. So initially we should have a books as a empty. That's why we have books defined here. So now we need to have a method. We need to have a way to add a book. So in order to do that, what we need to do, def book self, it takes the book. Oops, okay, for the simple thing, I'm just removing the type definition there. So what we need to do, we just need to append this. So we defined a list here for self.books, self.books dot append book. So now we can add the book to the library, and then we need a way to find the book or get the book by name. Let's get it as get book, and we need to pass book, okay, name and author. So now we need to find the book. Let's define the book equals to none and use the for loop to iterate through all available books and find it. For underscore book in self dot books, if book dot name equals to name and book dot author equals to author, then book equals to book. Oh, my bad. This is underscore book. Book equals to underscore book. And once we found the book, we need to stop the iteration. Okay, let's break it. Return book. So now we need now we know how to get the book from the available books, and we need to borrow the book. Let's define that as well. Borrow a book self, and uh, user just gives book name and author. So now what we need to do, we need to find the book, and then we need to remove that book from available books. So let's do that. So in order to do that, we need to find the book. Book equals to self dot get book of name comma author. So now we got the book. Now what we need to do, we need to remove it from the available books. So that is self dot books. Self dot books dot remove book. So this is the library class. Sorry, class. So here we define the function or method, that is add book. We can able to add a new book to the library, and we can get book by name and author, and we can borrow the book from the library. So once we borrow the book, we need to remove that book from the available books. So that's what we have, all the three methods. Let's use the these classes. Okay, let's create the library. Library equals to library, and for this it is accepting books. So we have a default value, that is books of list here. So though we didn't pass anything, um, it didn't throw any error. So now we have that. Let's create the book. Book equals to book of Python, and then let's call author, let's call John as author, and add this book to library. So it takes a book, we pass the book. So let's print the library dot books to find whether we added the book to the library or not. See, okay, let's clear this out. My bad. Clear. Oh, okay. So here we can see that we have a book object in the library. So now we have the books. Let's create one more book and add it to the library. Let's create Java. Let's change this to 1G. Let's create C language, that is Danish. Let's add all these books. Oh, my bad. Let's rename it to Python. That's because that's a Python book. Let's rename it to Java. That's a Java book, and let's rename it to C book. Add book Python. Add book Java, and add book C book. So let's print the books. Now we have three books inside the library. So now what we need to do, we need to borrow one book. or we need to get the book. Library dot, we have the books, library dot get book. We need to pass name, that is Java, and author is Anji. So we got the book, that is Java, and let's borrow the book. Yeah. Now what we need to do, we need to use borrow book, that is Java. So once we borrow this book, we need to find the book whether that is there or not. So okay, let me remove this print statement from here. We borrowed the book. Let's go through the all available books, that is for book in library dot books print book. So here what we are doing, we just borrowed the book from the library, and now we are printing all available books in the library. So let me clear this out and run it. So we have borrowed the book, that's why it is removed from the library, and we got only two books, that is Python and C. So let me comment out this borrow book and run the code again. So now we have all three books, that is Python, Java, and C. So that's how we used classes, that is book class and library class, to implement the library functionality. Yeah, so we solved this library catalog using Python. So this way we use classes. So here we can see that we got how many book and class, only two classes, and we solved it. So here we defined 3 to 4 functions. So this way it improves these are all these methods are related to library, so that's why we write it in a library class, and we define the book that is related to book. So that's why so here we can see that we separated the functionality of books and library as two different things and implemented it. So this way we can break down the problem and solve it using Python classes. So yeah, so if you find this video is useful, then like it and share it, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.